about, well, a month before our inauguration, pardon me, before Mr. Lincoln's inauguration. Some newspaper correspondents gleaned from some of the people with whom I have been conversing the fact that Mr. Lincoln and I were discussing the merits of his potential cabinet nominations.
Ooh, that's trouble.
Well, I was stunned by the carpet deprecation of the press claiming I was stepping out of my proper sphere. I was only a wife, not someone qualified to discuss important matters with the President of the United States. Oh, and that was just the first of many more newspaper diatribes against my supposedly improper behavior.
What I couldn't get over is that she hadn't even gotten to Washington and into the White House yet, and they were criticizing her. Oh, and then when you did finally get in, first thing we read about in the papers, they were criticizing you for spending too much of the taxpayers' money.
Only on items needed to refurbish their nation's executive mansion. Oh, but every penny I spent was exaggerated and then attacked as being frivolous and extravagant. Oh, they never reported our families, the poor condition of our families' private rooms, while the carpets were threadbare and the drapes were all chopped up from people taking pieces home as souvenirs.
And my wife told me that she learned from you that, shall we call them the elite ladies of Washington society, those ladies didn't warm up to you.
They watched and criticized every move I made. Every aspect of my appearance was critically examined. One of those ladies even said that I was awfully Western, unrefined, and loud. Well, I merely dismissed their incivilities, for far weightier matters by then had commenced.
Well, I should say, 1 month into the presidency and the Civil War began, and sad to say, the initial battles were Confederate victories, sending wounded soldiers, and the amount of dead in the Union Army started to quickly climb. And you know, the press almost immediately found the major fault to all that was their newly elected president.
And then they began to use my Kentucky family to attack the president. They couldn't mention too many times how many of my siblings and cousins supported the Southern cause, how many of them joined rebel armies. Oh, and then, if you can believe this, they even started the rumor that I, the president's wife, was a spy for the Confederacy. Oh.
Come down here. Why don't you do this? Why don't you tell these people about, what life was like day to day as wife of the president? Or what I liked is the way that one reporter referred to you as the first lady of the land.
Well, first lady of the land or not, again, nothing turned out as I had expected. I no longer had any time to talk to my husband during the day because those private secretaries of his, they kept his every hour scheduled. If I wanted to speak to my husband during the day, I had to send a written request into those officious and often haughty secretaries. Well, I admit, at times I did unload a few barbs of irritation, only to learn later that behind my back, they were calling me Hellcat.
Oh, no. No, I mean, shame. Shame on those secretaries.
But, sir, I do not understand why you are chuckling.
It's just that Elizabeth and I have from time to time seen you unload barbs of irritation. But no, the important thing is you got some good press coverage then because they admired the way she went to those military hospitals. You know, in Washington, D.C., evidently they had about only 3 or 4 hospitals, and then when the war started, they had to increase that number, because before first year of war was up, they had 8,000 military patients stuffed into the hospitals, and before the next 6 months, that number doubled. And we were in the beginning of the war, and we had no idea if the thing was ever going to end.
Those hospitals provided me the only opportunity I had to help with our war effort. I wrote letters for the seriously wounded, and I delivered baskets of fresh fruit and flowers. I walked those wards for hours, trying to say words of hope and encouragement, trying to appear cheerful and positive. But each and every visit that I made to those hospitals only increased my own feelings of hopelessness and depression.
And you know, she was in the worst possible location. After all, Washington, D.C., well, it was surrounded by slave states. Oh, fortunately for the Union, the slave state of Maryland and Delaware stayed in the Union, but of course not Virginia. And it was right across the Potomac River. Capital of Virginia, Richmond, quickly became the capital of the whole Confederacy, and that meant they were only 100 miles away from Washington, D.C. That must have been worrisome.
Worrisome? I was petrified. Why, at times those streets swarmed with Union troops, but at other times we were left totally defenseless, just sitting there in danger of a rebel army invasion.
Oh, and you were in the... You could have been a possible rush in and capturing the president, and maybe even taking the family.
Yes, oh, and then. Well, and then my sweet 11-year-old Willie, he came down with a bilious fever that worked its demonic way into typhoid, and Willie, too, passed over. Well, my spirit was crushed. I just did not have the courage to face the loss of yet a second son. And so, Mr. Lincoln, seeing the extent to which I was slipping, he put aside his own pain and grief and did everything in his power to help me try to regain my equilibrium.
Oh, yes, I would imagine that was when, well, you began to have a couple of those seances. Right in the White House.
Oh, yes, a number of them, in fact. Oh, now, Mr. Lincoln did not believe in those sessions, but I certainly did. Oh, and Mr. Lincoln, knowing that they were helping me, he accompanied me. Oh, and once, our medium did help me make a fleeting contact with my recently departed Willie.
Well, you know, when I heard of it, my attitude was, she's not hurting anything, and if it's helping her, why should people criticize that?
Well, and it was helping me. Well, that is, it was helping me with my sorrow over Willie. What it was not helping me with, though, was my need to escape that war. Oh, to escape the summertime stench of dead horses decaying in the streets. Streets that turned into canals of mud in heavy rains. Oh, no, I needed to escape that city itself, and so on occasion, I did. I would slip out and very often go to New York City.
Well, now, I was going to bring that up, and that became kind of a problem, but you brought it up, so you got to tell them what in the world you were doing.
Well, I didn't have many friends in New York City, so I shopped. Well, I did buy everything from clothes to curtains, dresses to dishes. Once, I even bought a dozen pairs of gloves.
Don't make light of this. That's what got you in, well, kind of problem here. You've got to tell them how you made your purchases.
Well,